Good afternoon, Judge, Commissioners. Can you all hear me?
We can, Max. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity, and Merry Christmas to all of you. I followed the presentation with much interest, and of course I read through all the backup material because I'm one of these citizen geeks who follows government expenditures very closely, and I try to understand everything. One thing that I find missing is any discussion of saving the taxpayers' money, which is always an option. You can bond at a slower rate, you cannot issue certain bonds, and potentially lower our tax burden or at least slow its growth. Interesting, the discussion of inflation for labor and construction costs. Commissioner Stout is correct. That is always going to be a factor, and labor and construction are always going to advance ahead of inflation. But there is also the inflation that families feel. Families are feeling inflation also in a way that they've never felt it in modern memory. Something to always keep in mind when considering issuing bonds. So the county, up until recently, has been fairly conservative in terms of its spending, and I think that was stated early in the presentation. You know, you look at the city, which has been on a spending spree like we've never seen under Tommy Gonzalez, which is now at no new revenue and committed to issuing no bonds for this fiscal year and maintaining no new revenue next fiscal year. Then on the state side, with the increase in the school exemption, we're looking at real tax relief for a good portion of our tax bill. Enter the county with its rollover rate to raise $34.4 million in new revenue, $100 million in COs and tax anticipation notes this fiscal year, the third double-digit salary increase of the Commissioners Court since fiscal year 2016, taking your salaries up 113% since that time, and also meaning that the county commissioners now earn well over double what city council representatives earn. And now we're talking about additional bonding, potentially $350 million in GOs, and that's fine because that goes to a vote of the people. It's the $150 million in COs for possibly as early as 2025 or spread out over time. That alarms me because the county is starting to behave like the city in terms of non-voter approved debt. We saw the big beatback on the UMC bond, and I hope that you all paid very close attention to that because that gauges the mood pretty closely of how citizens feel about certificates of obligation. And in the presentation also, I'm looking at future CO issuances going forward year by year. And now I'm hearing, which of course is not in the presentation, the potential for UMC to build a new East Side hospital, way out in Far East, and the bonding that would accompany that, which would also go before you, the judge and commissioners, for a vote. Of course, that's on the UMC side, but you will be responsible for authorizing that issuance as well. So, I'm also thinking, where can you cut? And Commissioner Stout, whom I respect quite a bit, brought that up. Where are you going to cut? It's a very good question, but when we see, the salary increases, when we see items like dredging Escarate, when I'm looking at a county contribution of $36 million in tax relief to Meta, 80% property tax forgiveness over a period of a decade, and makes you want to look at other 381 agreements and to see what's going on there. I wonder whether there actually is a way to trim, if there is a way to streamline, or at least not to grow so fast. Ileana Holguin, Commissioner Holguin seems to be the only one on this court who is publicly expressing a sentiment in terms of taxpayer needs, in terms of taxpayer fears of inflation, taxpayer fears of higher tax rates. And I would just hope that all five of you would think of us very closely. My mother moved out of El Paso because she couldn't afford her taxes anymore. I can name a dozen people within a half-mile radius of me who've moved to New Mexico to avoid this tax burden. And I can tell you that the population of the city of El Paso has declined by 6,000 people since 2017, whereas the county population has grown very anemically. And no one wants to talk about this, but I'm convinced it's because of our taxes. We are no longer competitive. The five taxing entities combined have pushed us into a bracket that makes us less competitive than other Texas cities. And I just wish the county would join together with the other 4 taxing entities, maybe even in a summit, to talk about how to divide up this pie and how to meet our strategic financial objectives.
Time.
Without one taxing entity, out-taxing the other. I understand the county's logic. The city and the schools are pulling back on their tax rates, and it's an opportunity for you guys to sort of jump in and get more. But I really wish that the county would join with the city in providing real tax relief to the people of this county. And I say this with all sincerity. I respect you all. I have been critical. I've been very, very careful in my criticism online and by email to try and be as accurate as I possibly can based on what I know, which is backups to your agenda items and my discussions with the Commissioners Court.
Max, could you summarize? We got a 5-minute, and just in respect to the other speakers, but if you could summarize, I'm willing to give you that time.
I'm sorry, if I would do what, Judge? I didn't get that.
Yes, your time, 5 minutes is over, and I'm willing to give you time to summarize, just to respect the other speakers.
I see. I'm actually finished. I've said everything that I need to say. I thank you for your time, and I thank the county advisors who provided the financial presentation. It's very comprehensive. And I will cede to Ryan Woodcraft, the other Libertarian. Thank you very much, and Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Max. Appreciate it.
Okay. We have 2 more speakers now on Teams. We will start with Ms. Jenny Solo.
Good afternoon, Janie. Mrs. Solo, can you hear us?
You can please unmute your microphone. She might have stepped away, Judge. We can move on to the next speaker.
Okay.
Mr. Ryan. Ryan Woodcraft.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you, Judge and Commissioners.
Thank you.
There's been an alarming trend the past few years throughout El Paso County. Elected officials and board members of taxing entities seem to want the lifestyle and luxuries of other Texas cities. So much so that there are numerous comparisons to cities like Austin and Fort Worth, regardless of what board, council, or court meeting you may attend. A significant issue with this is that we don't have the economic base to support those desires. Austin has a median income of about $86,000, median home value of $461, and a tax rate of 1.95%. Fort Worth has a median income of around $73,000, median home value of $250, and a tax rate of about 1.9%. El Paso has a median income of $55,000. Our home values median is about $153, and we have about a 2.88% tax rate and nearly a 20% poverty rate. We are being taxed out of prosperity, and it has to stop. In a hearing in August, the commissioner for Precinct 4 mentioned that we have a stagnant population, and he's right. Significantly high property tax rates is why our population is stagnant. The County Commissioners Court recently maxed out their portion of our property taxes and gave themselves a significant pay raise. Not everyone in this county has the privilege to give themselves a pay raise at the expense of those who can't afford it, yet still may ask for more funds for a capital plan. As discussed thoroughly in item 11 earlier today, even the budget that was just passed isn't truly balanced. We're still shuffling around millions of dollars to pay for unfunded obligations. And while the state legislature has a role, this court ultimately is responsible for our budget. In August, it was stated that 50% of our budget is the state's fault. And today, the commissioner for Precinct 2 stated it was around 70%. Yes, please. Let's hold our state representatives and our state senator accountable. But we've got to stop placing the blame at their feet and washing our hands of it. Commissioners have a fiduciary responsibility to the populace, and drowning us in debt is just irresponsible. If the court is so concerned about the potential of reducing services and programs and personnel, maybe we shouldn't be giving away dozens of millions of dollars in tax breaks to companies who bring in minimal jobs. If the concern is shifting the tax burden from homeowners to businesses, stop giving businesses corporate welfare without a long-term return on investment. In the presentation we just saw, on slide 6, it states the following concerns. Trend of operating deficits, materially weakening financial profile. below average resident income and property wealth metrics, and prolonged economic contraction. I too share those concerns. The items you want to fund are the responsibility of the county, and rightfully so. Yet somehow these basic responsibilities aren't funded in the budget. You want the taxpayers to pay even more than our maxed out tax rate. And if our government can't afford to meet our basic obligations without going into debt, then maybe we're doing too much. Yes, thankfully, at least GOs provide voters the opportunity to direct the court on what we want. But COs and tax anticipation notes shouldn't even be an option without proper planning. Inevitably, at the end of each of these public comment sessions, we will hear from a couple of those on the court who like to give us a one-directional, self-righteous lecture on what we, the public, don't understand or what we need to realize. But here is something I ask you to keep in mind. Those who are financially secure enough and can afford the tax increases will remain here and will pay them. But we're hemorrhaging middle-class families who can afford the increases but choose to move their families somewhere else where their spending power gives them a better quality of life. Those who can't afford the increases and can't afford to move are left with minimal options to provide for their families, and they are the ones who suffer the most. So while some of you are worried about our county's credit score, families are worried about surviving. I appreciate your time, even if it is a little later in the day than the numerical ordering of the agenda items inferred. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Always appreciate your views. Thank you.